She's running like the whole world depends on this moment, because for her it does. Nagissa is racing down the street with that kind of breathless excitement that only shows up when somebody you love is about to become even more important to your life. She's heading to meet Saho's fiancé for the first time, and she looks happy in the clean, uncomplicated way that only people with a safe home can afford. Her sister Saho is not just family. She's the one person who gave her stability, warmth, and a place to stand when the rest of the world kept making her feel small. That is why she is smiling so hard. She is not just meeting a man, she is meeting the future of the only person who ever truly had her back. And then he walks in. The smile disappears so fast it feels violent. Because standing in front of her is Sakora. The first boy she ever loved. The person she spent years trying to stop thinking about. The one memory she never fully managed to bury. And now he is standing there as Saho's fiancé. That one moment changes the emotional temperature of the entire story. Before anybody says a word, before anybody explains anything, the damage is already done. The past has entered the room wearing a present-day face, and from here on out, everything that looks normal is going to be a lie. Because this is not just a reunion. This is the kind of reunion that starts tearing a family apart from the inside. And by the time the story is finished, nobody will be able to say they did not see the wreckage coming. The next morning opens on something almost gentle. Saho is already up, already moving around the kitchen, already taking care of Nagissa before Nagissa even asks. She wakes her up, makes her breakfast, and serves it like she knows exactly how to make her sister feel loved. That kind of routine says a lot. It says this is a household built on trust, on comfort, on one sister carrying the weight of another without making a scene about it. While they eat, Saho tells Nagissa to organize the things she left behind after moving in a month ago, then she casually asks about the new job. The second Nagissa hears that question, her whole face changes. She perks up instantly and starts talking with genuine gratitude. She knows she got this opportunity because Saho helped her. She knows she would have been lost without her. That is what makes the later betrayal hurt even more, because this story does not begin with hate, it begins with care. Nagissa realizes she's going to be late, so she bolts out of the house in a panic, and Saho practically escorts her to work like a protective parent sending a child into the world. When she arrives at the company, Nagissa looks exactly like a new employee trying too hard not to mess up. She is eager, kind, overhelpful, and visibly nervous. If somebody passes by her with a stack of papers, she offers help. If someone looks overwhelmed, she offers help. If someone needs anything at all, she offers help. Her instinct is to be useful because usefulness is the easiest way for her to feel worthy. Her manager gives her a pile of posters to take to the sales department, and because she is moving too fast and not paying attention to the world around her, she crashes straight into someone in the hall. She apologizes immediately. Then she looks up and freezes. It is Sakora. Or at least it is somebody who looks exactly like him. The resemblance is so perfect that for a second her brain refuses to cooperate. She is ready to ask him what he is doing there, ready to say his name, ready to demand an explanation. But before she can get anything out, he cuts her off with a calm, professional introduction that makes it sound like they have never met before. That answer should not be possible. It makes her feel like she is losing her grip on reality. She knows what she saw. She knows what his face looked like years ago. She knows what his voice sounds like. And yet he is standing there acting like a stranger. So now the question is not just whether he is Sakora. The question is whether time itself has become cruel enough to place a perfect copy of her first love directly in her path just to see whether she can survive it. Later, she asks Koda where Sakora used to live. When he says Tokyo, her confusion deepens. Tokyo, not her town, not her memory, not the place where their story began. Tokyo. Maybe she was wrong, maybe it was somebody else. Maybe her heart is playing tricks on her because she never truly healed. That is the first little lie she tells herself. It will not be the last. The story then slips back 9 years, and suddenly everything makes more sense. Nagissa was miserable back then. Her grades were bad, her confidence was even worse. She lived in the shadow of her older sister, who was the kind of student everyone praised without thinking twice. When somebody grows up being compared to a sibling who seems brilliant, every failure starts feeling personal. Every mistake feels larger than it is. Every success feels borrowed. That was Nagissa's emotional climate. She never got to just exist. She had to keep measuring herself against somebody who seemed built to win. Then at school, she sees a group of girls bullying another student, and when she tries to step in, the cruelty turns on her instead. That moment matters because it shows you the kind of world she was living in. It was not a place where kindness automatically got rewarded. It was a place where trying to help could cost you even more humiliation. So when she gets isolated, she does not just feel lonely, she feels erased. No support, no friends she can lean on, no one to tell her she is enough. That kind of emptiness makes people desperate for one small opening. For Nagissa, that opening comes in the form of an ad for a drawing course. It seems tiny at first, almost laughably small, but it ends up changing her life. She goes because she has nothing else to lose, and that is where she meets Sakora for the first time. He is not dramatic, he is not flashy. He is just kind in a way she is not used to. He notices her sitting alone, he speaks to her softly. He tells her he is only an assistant teacher for now but will be studying there himself when the new term starts. It is such a simple interaction that somebody else might forget it immediately. But for a girl who has spent years feeling invisible, being noticed is enormous. That tiny connection begins to build something in her. Sakora becomes the first person to see her talent before she sees it herself. He encourages her, he supports her art. He gives her the feeling that maybe there is a version of her that is not just a disappointment. And once somebody like Nagissa gets that kind of validation, it is hard to let go. Back in the present, she still cannot stop thinking about him. At work, she throws herself into a meeting and tries to focus only on the designs. She wants to grow, she wants to improve, she wants to become somebody who can stand in a room and not feel like the least important person in it. When one of her designs gets rejected, she immediately asks why. It is not defiance for the sake of defiance, it is genuine curiosity. She wants to understand. Her manager, unfortunately, is not in the mood for sincerity. He gets irritated, the room stiffens. Nagissa starts to feel the old embarrassment creeping up on her, the same kind that always shows up when somebody makes her feel too much like a problem. Before things can get worse, Sakora steps in and smooths it over. He tells the department head that Nagissa's enthusiasm is a good thing, that her energy is impressive, that she reminds him of his younger self. It is a rescue so subtle that anyone who was not paying attention might miss it, but Nagissa notices. After the meeting, she thanks him. He laughs and teases her for being the same impulsive girl she always was. That line hits her harder than it should, because now she knows he remembers. He may be hiding it, but he remembers her. He knows who she is. And after years of wondering whether she mattered enough to stay in his memory, that answer is enough to shake her. When she gets home, she tells Saho everything. Saho is thrilled. She is happy that her sister's old feelings are being stirred up in a way that seems harmless. She even encourages Nagissa and says maybe she should reconnect with this old first love if he really is the same man. Then she casually drops the next bomb. She wants Nagissa to meet the man she is dating. Nagissa gets excited instantly because in her mind this is just a family milestone. Her sister is serious about somebody. Maybe things are finally settling down. Maybe life is moving in a better direction. Then the man walks in. And it is Sakora. The room collapses into silence in a way that only awkward human shame can create. Nagissa is stunned, Sakora is stiff. Saho is acting normal in the most unsettling way possible. She explains that he works with her in the same company. She talks about their relationship casually, with the calm confidence of somebody who has no idea she just introduced a grenade into the family dinner. Nagissa almost says something about her own past with him, maybe because honesty feels easier than pretending, maybe because some part of her still wants the truth to be spoken aloud before it poisons everything further. But Saho cuts her off. Then she mentions that she and Sakora have been together for 7 years, ever since they met in Tokyo. That sentence seals the entire emotional trap. Nagissa realizes she cannot make this about herself, she cannot challenge it. She cannot confess. She cannot break this apart without hurting the one person who has always been there for her. Though she swallows the truth. She decides this part of her life is over. At least that is what she tells herself. But buried feelings do not evaporate just because you order them to. They sit there, they wait, they get worse. That is exactly what starts happening next. Nagissa keeps seeing Sakora around the office, and every time she does, the old emotion creeps closer to the surface. His coldness confuses her. His occasional softness gives her hope. The inconsistency is the worst part because it makes her feel like she's always one moment away from understanding him and one moment away from losing him again. Meanwhile, Saho keeps pushing her to reconnect with the man from her past, completely unaware that she is speaking about her own fiancé. Or maybe unaware on purpose. The story leaves that ambiguity hanging because Saho's cruelty is often wrapped in just enough plausible innocence to keep people doubting themselves. One evening, the entire team goes out for dinner and drinks after work. Nagissa tries to stay out of the way, but one of the older coworkers keeps pressuring her to drink more. She says no. He pushes. She tries again. He pushes harder. It is the kind of small, everyday boundary violation that people pretend is harmless until it stops being harmless. Then Sakora quietly takes the glass from her and drinks it himself. It is a small move, but it says everything. He is still watching her. Still protecting her. Still stepping in before she gets swallowed by the room. Later, when they end up alone, he notices how much she has changed. The last time he saw her, she was still a teenager. Now she is 25. She pushes back a little, almost embarrassed by how much of herself she still carries around in his presence. Then, in a moment of honesty that immediately terrifies her, she admits that her feelings for him back then were real. The second the words leave her mouth, she realizes how dangerous they sound. So she immediately tries to recover. She asks him not to mention anything about their past to Saho. She does not want her sister to misunderstand. She does not want to create a problem where one does not have to exist. But the problem already exists. It is standing right in front of her. And it is smiling. That night on the way home, Nagissa realizes someone is following her. At first she tries to ignore it, then the footsteps get closer, faster, heavier. She calls Saho. No answer. So she runs. She runs harder than she probably has in years, terrified by the feeling that somebody is closing in on her while the rest of the world pretends nothing is wrong. And then, right before she thinks she has escaped, a masked man appears behind her, grabs her violently, and shoves her into a car. What happens next is horrifying. He tears at her clothes. He takes pictures. He makes her feel trapped and powerless and humiliated. Then, when another person appears nearby, he throws her out of the vehicle and disappears before anything worse can happen. The person who finds her is Sakora. He rushes to her side immediately, takes off his jacket, wraps her up, stays close while she shakes and cries and tries to process what just happened to her. It is the first completely human thing to happen to her in hours. But from a distance, Saho is watching. And her expression is not relief. It is rage. Then she gets a message saying the mission failed because someone appeared. She is sent the photos too. That is when the truth becomes clear. Saho was behind the attack. She set the whole thing up. Not because she wanted Nagissa dead. Because she wanted control. Because she wanted to interrupt any emotional closeness between Nagissa and Sakora before it could become real. The next day, the company is flooded with the photos. Nagissa becomes the subject of gossip instantly. The looks, the whispers, the assumptions, it all hits at once. That kind of public shame is brutal because you can feel it before anyone says a word. Her manager drags her into a meeting room to ask what happened, and Nagissa is too stunned to explain anything properly. She's still trying to understand how her private nightmare became a company-wide spectacle. Sakora steps in again and tells the truth. Someone attacked her. Someone forced the photos. She is not to blame. He says it with enough force that the room finally quiets down. But the damage is already spreading. Then things get even uglier. The coworker who harassed her had hidden cameras in the women's restroom. That revelation turns the situation from humiliating to disgusting. He is exposed. He knows he is finished. So instead of accepting it quietly, he storms out of control, grabs Nagissa in front of everyone, and screams that she ruined his life because she acted interested, then rejected him. In his mind, he is the victim. That is the kind of delusion that makes people dangerous. He admits he spread the photos. The room is stunned. And Sakora once again steps between Nagissa and the threat. At that point, the pattern is obvious. Whenever something terrible happens, Sakora keeps showing up to shield her from it. That matters because it deepens the emotional knot between them while making the situation between her and Saho even more unstable. Nagissa refuses to press charges because she does not want to cause more trouble for the company, which only makes the boss respect her more. In a weirdly tender gesture, he gives her lunch made by his wife as a thank you. It is one of those moments that feels almost too gentle for this story. Like the narrative is reminding us that human decency still exists somewhere in the building, even if most of the people in it are acting like monsters. Then Koda invites her out for the day. At first she hesitates, but she goes. Koda is attentive in a way that is almost too obvious. He buys her things, he listens when she talks, he notices her moods, He gives her a kind of attention that could become comfort if she were looking for comfort instead of emotional confusion. And part of her does appreciate it because he is safe in a way Sakora is not. He does not carry her past in his face. He does not force her into old memories every time he enters a room. Then they pass a bridal shop and accidentally spot Sakora inside with Saho. Kota pulls Nagissa in to make sure it really is them. And then they see Saho in a wedding dress. That image is devastating. It turns a vague emotional fear into a visual fact. Sakora is not just a memory now. He is not just somebody from the past. He is standing there choosing a future with her sister. Kota is shocked because he had no idea what was happening, but the deeper shock is what happens inside Nagissa. She keeps her face under control. She keeps her body still. But inside, the whole structure of her emotional life is cracking. Saho notices that Sakora is upset because Nagissa is with Kota, and she uses the opportunity to casually mention something from 6 years ago. His face changes immediately, which tells us there is a deeper story hidden under the surface between them. The show never lets the audience relax because every time one secret gets exposed, another one appears under it. After that, Kota finally gets his chance to confess. He takes Nagissa somewhere quiet and tells her he likes her. He is sincere, he is direct, he is careful, and for a second it seems like maybe this could be the healthier path, the safer path, the path that does not involve years of trauma and sister-level sabotage. But when he moves closer, Nagissa freezes. Not because she does not care. Because the only person she can picture in that moment is Sakora. So she apologizes and leaves. Soon after, she messages Sakora and asks him to tell her the truth. Why did he disappear all those years ago? Why didn't he just say he was done? Why leave her with no closure? She still has a place for him in her heart, and that is exactly why the unanswered questions hurt so much. He meets her. She confronts him. And for the first time, the past is not just a memory. It is a conversation. She tells him he should have been honest instead of vanishing. He tells her he had reasons. Before they can go any farther, Saho appears and the whole scene detonates. Nagissa panics and runs. A car comes toward her. Sakora moves to protect her. She shoves him out of the way and gets hit instead. That accident changes everything. At the hospital, when she wakes up, she acts strangely calm. Too calm. The doctor later explains that the trauma caused memory loss. Nagissa is shocked because she thinks she was about to finally explain things and now the whole board has been reset. Sakora asks her to go home and let him stay with Saho. Nagissa feels guilty and insists he should rest instead. Then Kota rushes in and asks whether she really lost her memory. That is when Saho drops the next lie. She says no, she remembers everything. She is simply pretending. Pretending so Sakora will feel guilty. Pretending so he will stay. Pretending so she can keep controlling the situation. At this point, she is no longer operating in ordinary jealousy. She is in full emotional warfare mode, and Kota is helping her, which makes the whole thing even darker because his loyalty is not based on love anymore. It is obsession. He is too deep in the mess to get out cleanly. Nagissa is crushed by guilt because she thinks she caused all of this. Saho visits her and plays the role of the forgetful sister perfectly. She acts like Nagissa is just another face to her, then says Sakora is the only person she remembers and that she wants to live with him until her memory returns. It is an ugly little performance, and it works because the people around her are exhausted enough to believe almost anything. Saho keeps pushing Sakora to move in too. She becomes dependent, fragile, needy, and he eventually gives in because he feels trapped by responsibility. Nagissa, meanwhile, doesn't resist. She suffers quietly. Then she finds the note in Saho's room. The note says her life would have been better if Nagissa had not existed. That one line changes the entire emotional framing of the sister relationship. It confirms what Nagissa has been afraid to suspect. Saho's cruelty is not random, it is old, it is deep, it has roots. Around that time, Saho's mother reveals the family secret. Saho is not her biological daughter. Her father had another wife before, and that woman abandoned her child when she was 2. Saho grew up with only her father, then watched him remarry and create a new family. From her perspective, Nagissa was not a sister. She was a replacement, a thief, a living proof that she had been left behind. And when their father died while trying to help Nagissa, that belief hardened into something poisonous. Saho started seeing Nagissa as the reason she lost everything. So she did what damaged people often do. She turned that wound into a mission. She approached Sakora because he reminded her of her father. She got obsessed, then possessive, then controlling, then destructive. She set up the company connection. She manipulated events so Nagissa would run into her old love again. She planned every little humiliation, every moment of confusion, every emotional crack. She wanted Nagissa to experience desire and loss together because that, in her mind, was justice. Then the story rewinds further and shows us just how broken her logic had become. As a child, Saho saw her father hit Nagissa under the table so he could give her a piece of cake. That memory sat in her head for years and turned into proof that Nagissa was always the favored one. From that point on, every little gesture became evidence of betrayal. When their father died on the way to bring Nagissa lunch, Saho made up her mind to punish her for the rest of her life. And because she is intelligent as well as damaged, she did not just lash out, she built a whole plan. She learned about Sakora. She played the long game. She leaned into the fact that he looked like her father to create an emotional substitute. She wanted to keep him close not just as a lover, but as a way to preserve the love she believed had been stolen from her. In her mind, if she could have Sakora and ruin Nagissa at the same time, maybe the past would finally stop hurting. That is what makes her so frightening. She is not just jealous. She is organized. And organized cruelty is always worse than impulsive cruelty because it lasts longer. The story reaches another breaking point when Nagissa confronts Saho directly. Saho locks her in a hidden room, hurts her, and starts explaining the full truth like she is finally delivering a closing argument. She admits to the manipulation, the fake attack, the company sabotage, the emotional traps, the way she set Sakora up in Nagissa's life again so she could watch the whole thing collapse. Nagissa tells her she is done being scared. Done running. Done letting guilt control her. And in that moment, there is a tiny shift, not a victory exactly, more like a survival instinct finally remembering it exists. Sakora rescues her. Nagissa and Sakora finally stop treating their feelings like some forbidden disease and speak honestly. He confesses that he never stopped loving her. She breaks down because she has loved him for years too. For a minute, it feels like the story might finally be headed somewhere soft. But of course Saho is still there. Still watching. Still twisting the knife. Still refusing to let anybody leave cleanly. And then comes the revelation that makes everything even sadder. Saho had been pregnant with Sakora's child years ago. The pregnancy ended in tragedy after the fall. That loss shattered whatever part of her was still capable of ordinary emotional healing. It fed the resentment. It gave her a grief she did not know how to process, so she weaponized it instead. Nagissa is horrified when she realizes her sister suffered through that alone. Not because it excuses anything, but because it explains why the pain curdled so badly. The emotional damage keeps layering on top of itself until it becomes almost impossible to separate love from control, grief from revenge, family from punishment. Eventually, Sakora ends the engagement with Saho and openly chooses Nagissa. For the first time, there is a real chance at something healthy. But the story is too far gone for peace to survive for long. A man whose life was destroyed by the earlier fallout attacks Sakora and kills him before he can build a future with Nagissa. That death hits like a wall. It does not just hurt her, it dismantles her. After the funeral, Nagissa shuts herself away completely. She falls into a darkness so deep she nearly ends her own life. And in a strange, brutal twist of fate, Saho is the one who saves her. That moment does not forgive anything, it does not heal the family, but it proves that even after all the destruction, some twisted strand of connection still exists between them. 3 years pass. Nagissa rebuilds her life. She has a daughter now. Nano. She works again. She smiles again. On the outside, things look normal. But in this story, normal never lasts long. When Saho introduces a new boyfriend, Nagissa is happy at first, honestly happy. She wants her sister to have peace, she wants the cycle to stop. Then she sees the look in Saho's eyes. That same possessive, unstable, emotionally hungry expression. And Nagissa realizes the truth. The wound was never really healed. It only changed shape. Because this family never learned how to love without gripping too tightly, and they never learned how to lose without trying to punish somebody for it. And that is what makes the ending so unsettling. Nobody won. Nobody got out clean. They all wanted love so badly that they kept turning it into ownership, guilt, and revenge. By the time the story closes, you can see exactly what destroyed them. It was never just betrayal. It was the refusal to let go. The refusal to forgive. The refusal to accept that wanting somebody does not give you the right to ruin everybody else around them. And when Saho looks at Nagissa at the very end with that same dark stare, the story leaves you with one awful realization. Some families do not heal. They just keep repeating the same pain until somebody finally breaks the cycle. And in this one, the cycle came at a terrible price. But honestly, what makes this story feel so emotionally heavy is not just the twists. It's the way every character slowly destroys themselves while trying to hold onto somebody else. Nagissa spends years chasing emotional closure. Saho spends years trying to replace the love she lost. Sakora spends years running away from guilt. And Kota completely loses himself trying to earn affection from somebody incapable of loving him normally. Nobody in this story knows how to let go. That's the real tragedy. And once you realize that, a lot of the earlier scenes start feeling different. Even the small moments, like the breakfast Saho makes in the morning, or the way Nagissa lights up anytime somebody praises her work, or the way Sakora keeps instinctively protecting her without even thinking. Those moments stop feeling sweet, because now you understand they were all warning signs. The emotional attachment between these people stopped being healthy a very long time ago. And the scariest part is that most of them don't even realize it. Take Nagissa for example. Throughout almost the entire story, she keeps blaming herself for things that were never fully her fault. Whenever something bad happens, her first instinct is apology. Even after the attack. Even after the leaked photos. Even after discovering Saho manipulated her repeatedly. Nagissa still spends most of her time wondering whether she somehow caused the pain around her. That mindset doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from years of growing up feeling lesser. Lesser than her sister. Lesser than everyone around her. So whenever chaos appears, her brain automatically assumes she must be responsible somehow. That's why Sakora affected her so deeply in the past. Because he was one of the first people who made her feel valuable without conditions. And when somebody gives you emotional safety during the worst period of your life, your heart remembers it forever. Even if years pass. Even if you try moving on. Even if logic tells you it's impossible. That emotional imprint stays. Which explains why seeing him again completely shattered her emotional balance. Because in her mind, Sakora isn't just an old crush. He represents the first version of herself she ever truly liked. Meanwhile, Sakora himself is emotionally complicated in a completely different way. At first he seems cold, distant, hard to read. But once the story reveals the truth behind his disappearance years earlier, his behavior suddenly makes more sense. He didn't leave because he stopped caring. He left because adults around them convinced him their relationship would destroy Nagissa's future. So instead of fighting for her, he sacrificed the relationship entirely. And honestly, that decision ruined him emotionally too. Because the second he sees her again at the company, it becomes painfully obvious he never actually moved on. That's why he keeps stepping in whenever she's in danger. That's why he keeps watching her even while trying to maintain distance. That's why his emotions keep slipping out in tiny moments no matter how hard he tries acting normal. The problem is that Sakora handles guilt terribly. Instead of confronting problems directly, he avoids them until they explode. He avoided explaining why he disappeared. Avoided admitting his feelings. Avoided ending things properly with Saho. And every time he delayed the truth, the situation became more poisonous. That's one of the reasons Saho's manipulation worked for so long. Because emotionally weak people are easy to trap with guilt. And Saho understood that better than anyone. Honestly, Saho might be one of the most psychologically disturbing characters in this entire story. Not because she screams all the time, Not because she acts violently, but because she understands emotions extremely well. She knows exactly what people want to hear, exactly how to make somebody feel guilty, exactly how to twist affection into obligation. And the scariest part is that sometimes she genuinely looks loving. That's why Nagissa never notices the danger immediately. Because Saho doesn't act cruel 24 hours a day. Sometimes she acts warm, protective, supportive, almost motherly, which makes the manipulation harder to detect. A lot of emotionally controlling people operate exactly like that. They mix kindness with damage so consistently that eventually the victim stops trusting their own instincts. And Saho does that constantly. One moment she's helping Nagissa pick clothes. The next moment she's arranging emotional traps behind her back. One moment she's comforting her. The next moment she's emotionally torturing her. That instability is what makes her terrifying. And once the story reveals her childhood, everything becomes even darker. Because Saho's obsession didn't suddenly appear overnight. It grew slowly. Year after year. Every perceived rejection. Every moment she thought her father loved Nagissa more. Every moment she felt replaced. Those feelings stacked on top of each other until they completely distorted her understanding of love. At some point she stopped wanting connection. She started wanting possession. That's why her relationship with Sakora feels so unhealthy from the beginning. She doesn't love him in a calm way. She clings to him, controls him, monitors him, tests him constantly. And the moment she senses emotional distance, she panics. That's why she orchestrates increasingly extreme situations. Because emotionally, she cannot tolerate the idea of abandonment. The fake memory loss is honestly one of the clearest examples. It's such a calculated move. She intentionally turns herself into somebody fragile and dependent because she knows Sakora's personality. She knows guilt controls him. So instead of forcing him physically, she traps him emotionally. And terrifyingly enough, it works. For a while at least. Then there's Koda. Honestly, Koda's story might be the saddest in a completely different way. Because unlike the others, Koda understands on some level that Saho is using him. He knows it. He sees it. But he keeps helping her anyway. That's how deep obsession can become. At first, he probably convinced himself that if he stayed loyal long enough, eventually Saho would choose him. Eventually she would notice him. Eventually she would realize he was the safer option. But instead, she keeps reducing him into a tool. And the more she rejects him emotionally, the more desperate he becomes. That desperation eventually turns him dangerous. Not because he's naturally evil, but because obsession mixed with humiliation can slowly destroy somebody's morality. That's why he participates in things he normally never would have done. The fake attack, the stalking, the manipulation, even the car accident. Step by step, his emotional dependence on Saho erodes his ability to think rationally. And by the time he realizes how far things have gone, he's already trapped too deep inside the chaos. One thing this story does surprisingly well is showing how emotional damage spreads from person to person. Nobody stays isolated. One person's trauma affects another. That person damages somebody else. Then the cycle keeps growing. Saho's childhood damage destroys Nagissa emotionally. Nagissa's unresolved feelings affect Koda. Koda's obsession helps enable Saho. Sakora's guilt feeds the manipulation. And slowly, everybody becomes trapped in the same emotional disaster. Even the workplace starts feeling infected by it. At first, the company scenes seem normal. Just ordinary office drama. But over time, the office becomes another battlefield. Rumors spread. Photos leak. People gossip. Relationships collapse. And every public interaction becomes emotionally loaded. That's part of why the story feels exhausting in an intentional way. The characters never truly get space to breathe. Every time somebody thinks things are calming down, another emotional disaster immediately appears. Even the brief happy moments feel temporary. Like the universe is only allowing them enough peace to make the next tragedy hurt harder. For example, when Sakora finally confesses his feelings properly. That scene should feel romantic. And technically it is. But there's so much emotional destruction surrounding it that the confession almost feels tragic instead. Because by that point, everyone watching already understands that somebody is going to get hurt no matter what choice gets made. If Sakora chooses Saho, Nagissa suffers. If he chooses Nagissa, Saho completely unravels. There is no clean solution anymore. The relationships became too tangled long before the truth came out. That's honestly why the hidden room confrontation works so well emotionally. Because by then, Saho finally stops pretending. No more fake innocence. No more emotional masks. No more pretending to be misunderstood. She finally admits how much of the suffering was intentional. And strangely enough, that honesty almost makes her easier to understand. Not sympathetic exactly, but understandable. Because beneath all the manipulation is somebody emotionally frozen in childhood grief. She never emotionally matured past the moment she felt abandoned. That's why she keeps recreating situations where people choose her or leave her. Over and over. Again and again. Almost like she's trying to replay her trauma until she finally wins. But of course, trauma doesn't work that way. You can't heal abandonment by controlling people. You can't heal loneliness by trapping someone beside you. And you definitely can't create love through guilt. That realization becomes even more painful once Sakora dies. Because his death feels meaningless in the cruelest possible way. After all the emotional chaos, after all the sacrifices, after finally choosing honesty, he still dies before getting the future he wanted. And honestly, that's probably the moment the story fully breaks Nagissa psychologically. Because up until then, she still believed suffering might eventually lead somewhere better. But Sakora's death destroys that hope. That's why her depression afterward feels so believable. She isn't just mourning a boyfriend. She's mourning the future version of herself that only existed when he was around. That's why she nearly ends her own life. Not because she's weak, but because emotionally she's exhausted. Completely exhausted. And once again, the person who pulls her back from the edge is Saho. Which creates one final emotional contradiction. Because despite everything terrible between them, Saho still cannot fully let Nagissa disappear either. That's what makes their relationship so tragic. It's toxic, damaging, manipulative. But underneath all of it, there's still genuine attachment buried somewhere deep inside. Neither sister fully knows how to exist without the other. And honestly, that final scene years later proves it perfectly. Nagissa rebuilt her life. She has a daughter, a career, a quieter existence. And for a while, it almost feels like the story finally escaped its own darkness. Then Saho introduces a new boyfriend. And instantly that old fear returns. Because trauma has patterns. And people who never properly heal often repeat those patterns without realizing it. The moment Nagissa sees that possessive look in Saho's eyes again, she understands immediately. The danger never fully disappeared. It just went dormant. That's why the ending feels so uncomfortable. The story doesn't really promise a happy ending. It promises survival. And those are two very different things. By the final scene, everybody left alive has been emotionally scarred in ways that probably never fully disappear. Nagissa learned love can become destructive. Saho learned obsession can destroy everything around her. Kota lost himself completely. And Sakora paid for everybody's emotional damage with his life. Which leaves the audience with one final question. How much suffering can a person justify in the name of love before it stops being love entirely? Because almost every terrible thing in this story started with somebody saying they cared about someone else. That's what makes it so disturbing. The characters aren't monsters in the traditional sense. Most of them started as lonely people desperately wanting connection. But loneliness mixed with obsession created something poisonous. And by the end, you realize the scariest part wasn't the manipulation. Or the violence. Or even the betrayals. It was how understandable some of the emotions felt before they became dangerous. That's why this story sticks in people's heads. Because underneath all the drama and psychological chaos is a very uncomfortable truth. People who are terrified of losing love can end up destroying the very thing they wanted most. And sometimes they don't even realize it until everything is already gone.